Hello, I'm Stephen Childs of virtualvoicelessons.net, and I would like to welcome you to today's lesson in our tone series entitled Resonance. Whenever we hear someone discussing a singer's overall voice quality, more often than not, the word resonance always seems to pop up in the conversation. Terms like this have become the buzzwords of singing, right along with the words diaphragm and project. Yet just like these classic words of voice, resonance is often misunderstood or spoken out of context. You know, one reoccurring obstacle that many teachers have to face when trying to teach certain concepts like tone is that so many smaller concepts have to be taught along with the main one. And the difficulty often lies on deciding which part do I teach first. Well, today's lesson is no different, as we will now see a discussion on the development of one's tonal quality needs to be coupled with a discussion on vocal resonance. Resonance is all around us. It is as much a part of our lives as gravity or friction. And as many things in life are, resonance is so simple that we don't usually notice it, yet when we examine its existence, we see simplicity become infinite complexity. There are many different types of resonance found in nature that lies outside the world of sound. There is orbital resonance, electrical resonance, and even magnetic resonance imaging, where we get the acronym MRI. But what about for voice? Well, resonance as it is applied to sound is simply defined as sound layering over itself. Not a big deal, right? Well, not until we realize that there are three types of resonance found within the act of singing, and all three needs to be in place and working well together to enhance our vocal tones. And notice, please, that I said enhance our tone. Resonance is not exactly tone itself. It is a thickener of our existing tone. That's all. In fact, Webster's defines resonance as the intensification and enriching of a musical tone by supplementary vibration. Let's look at resonance as it is used in the world of audio recording, which is where, in my opinion, tone is understood and applied in the most demanding manner. Any recording studio or computer-based recording program, such as Pro Tools or Cubase, will have applied on the different recorded instruments an equalizer, which is meant to shape the tone, and then an echo effect known as reverb. This effect is usually placed on instruments such as guitars, drums, piano, and of course voice. Again, we have the tone shaper, which is EQ, then the tone enhancer, which is reverb. Both are two separate ideas working as one. The misunderstanding of tone versus resonance is understandable. The echo itself will be enhancing or thickening certain frequencies more so than others, and in the natural world, tone is shaped through external vibrations as well. The fact is, both concepts of shaping and enhancing are very closely related, but again, are not the same. Now, what we want to ultimately achieve as singers is to shape our tone and enhance them naturally first before we alter them artificially in a recording studio or PA system. So let's take a quick look at how sound itself is produced so we can then see how sound can be shaped and enhanced. Now, to begin with, we must bear in mind that all sound is produced by vibration. All sound, whether it is a fire siren or my hand rubbing across my jeans. If something vibrates fast enough within the medium of air, it will produce sound. Even my hand, if shook back and forth fast enough, would produce an audible pitch. The reason for this is as an object passes quickly through air for a brief moment, a hole is formed where there is no air. We call this hole of non-air a vacuum. The air surrounding this vacuum quickly tries to fill in the hole which in turn sends a rippling effect known as a sound wave. So sound that travels through air can be viewed as a hole being filled, causing another hole that is filled, and so on. This wave of energy enters into our ears and is ultimately interpreted as sound. Now, the faster the vibration, the higher the pitch would become. This is known as the sound wave's rate. The volume of the pitch is another story. The volume or loudness of the pitch is controlled by how much air is moved around. This is the sound wave's amplitude. The more air that is displaced, the greater its amplitude, and the louder the pitch will be. Now, the tonal quality of my hand waving back and forth a few hundred times a second may not sound so appealing as of yet. Its tone needs to be shaped in some manner by adding some form of EQ, which again is an equalizer, which will raise or lower the volume of the different frequencies of my hand tone, and then a nice thick layer of resonance, which again is echo, which will enhance it. In the natural world, there will be many different elements that can shape and enhance my hand's tone. If my hand were open or closed, or tight or loose, the size, shape, and orientation of the room that I'm in will alter it. Am I wearing jewelry? The different density of the metal in my watch would resonate differently than my skin would separately. And the two combined together would sound different altogether. Now you see, just a simple examination of tone has us discussing words such as rate, amplitude, and frequencies. Many small concepts rolled into one. So to make this easier for us to visualize, let's move away from all the technical language and break resonance down into simpler descriptions so we can better understand its application. Now, what I have here in my hand is a standard run-of-the-mill tuning fork. This device used to be the only method of tuning instruments such as guitars and piano back in the day, until the marriage between technology and music surfaced and gave us electronic and recently digital instrument tuners. But tuning forks are still a great way to teach basic facts about sound energy. I will now strike the tuning fork, which in turn causes the thongs to be set into vibration. This particular tuning fork is now vibrating at the incredible speed of 440 vibrations per second. This speed is what we define as the note or pitch A. When we hear a guitar, for instance, playing this note, its string is also vibrating 440 times a second. If I start to sing that note, my vocal cords are also vibrating 440 times a second. Amazingly, if I sing an octave higher, my vocal cords would be vibrating 880 times a second, which is exactly double the original speed. This, by the way, is why octaves sound exactly alike, but is higher or lower in pitch. So again, I will strike the tuning fork, setting it back into vibration. And to my initial disappointment, I don't hear too much. That is, until I sit the handle on a hard surface. Incredibly, the tuning fork has seemingly increased its overall volume. Or has it? I mean, I can hear it now, unlike when I first struck it. But what has happened? What we just saw and heard was our first type of resonance in action, which is sounding board resonance. This type of resonance is one of the easiest of the three to actually see its benefits, especially as it's applied to singing. As you could hear, the overall volume of the tone increased as well as the fullness of the tone itself. So what caused this? When I struck the tuning fork and touched it to the wood surface, the vibrations of the fork transferred into the wood, causing the wood to vibrate as well. Remember that the tuning fork is vibrating at 440 times a second. When I place the ball end on direct contact with the wood, the vibrating energy of the tuning fork caused the wood itself to vibrate 440 times a second as well. Now I have two things vibrating together at the same time. So that is why the tuning fork seems louder. We can see this type of energy transference simply by striking a table at one end while touching the table somewhere else. You can feel the energy leave your hand and travel through the table and then felt by my other hand. This is known as kinetic energy. This type of energy is all around us and is actually controlled by many skilled arts, such as Kung Fu or karate. Within the art of singing, the sounding board resonance is actually the bones of our face and the bones inside of our mouths that are set into vibration. The vibration of bone structures is the very reason we have terms such as head voice and chest voice. In the dawn of modern voice training, it was, and unfortunately still is, believed that our lower voices caused the chest to vibrate, which added resonance to the voice, and the higher, more soprano voice to vibrate in what they call the mask, which is the area around the cheeks and lower forehead. Again, very common voice teacher terms, but as you will see, not entirely accurate in its overall understanding. Now let's get you to feel sounding board resonance in action. If you place your hand across your chest and sing as low as you can in a moderate volume, you can actually feel the chest vibrate. This is the idea behind the term chest voice. Now, is this sounding board resonance in action? Absolutely. But is this what gives our singing voices the rich, full tone that the average voice teacher suggests? The answer is quite simply no. You see, it has been proven through audio analyzing instrumentation over the course of the last few decades, and should have been put to rest really ever since the 1970s, that the bones of the chest do not add any audible resonance to the singer's tone. And this is due to a simple fact. The chest is covered by too much fat, muscle, and tissue, and is dampening the sound before it ever adds additional resonance. So the whole notion of chest voice, which was a range classification in the classical era, is simply false. The upper range classification used in the classical world, known as head voice, is also misunderstood. What was believed long ago, and is still taught today, is the theory that when we sing high notes, particularly in the soprano range, the upper part of the facial bones will be set into vibration and in turn add resonance to the voice. The fact is that the head does not vibrate only for the high voice. It vibrates no matter what pitch is given. So to call the high soprano voice head voice and the lower voice range chest voice is one of the most inaccurate terms used amongst teachers of voice. But unfortunately, these terms are still used regularly and would be fruitless to avoid using them. It's simply the misunderstanding of what is truly behind these terms. We can use the terms, just not the explanations behind them. For us as contemporary singers, the area that is most affected by sounding board resonance along with the facial bones is without a doubt the inside of the mouth. There are plenty of hard surfaces, such as the roof of the mouth, that lend themselves perfectly as resonators, as we will soon see. The second type of resonance that we're going to look at is called air column resonance, and it has a very interesting application in singing. It is where we get our vowel sounds. You see, air molecules themselves can be set into vibration, just like hard surfaces can. But air has the unique ability to be shaped, and this is exactly what vowel sounds are. They are shaped forms of air set into vibration. And the importance of this phenomenon is clear when we realize that when we sing, we are indeed singing vowel sounds. We, of course, cannot sing most consonants. We can't sing T's, for instance. We can't go T. We also cannot sing S's. We cannot go S. And the consonants that can be somewhat sung as R's and L's often sound terrible. Imagine if I were to go your or I feel. In other words, when we sing, we are singing vowels. And vowels are simply shaped airforms that are set into vibration. To demonstrate this, I have a very interesting device here known as a thunder tube. I purchased this a few years ago to possibly use as an interesting sound effect for a band that I was hired to produce. I never did use this device, but what I did discover was that it was a great tool for demonstrating resonance, especially how it applies to vowel sound formation. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to cover the end of this tube, and I'm going to make a little round circle. This is what our oo vowel is. Oo is sound that is going through a small circle. I will set this into vibration, and when I open it up, you heard it go from oo to ah. Take a listen. So as you can see, the shaping of air is a huge part of singing, and not just for vowels, but overall tone as well. This is why correct mouth and throat openings are so very important in singing. The more closed we keep these two, the less air there is to be sent into vibration. Almost any time you see a still photograph of a well-respected singer in the process of actually singing, you will find they almost always have their mouths wide open, never shut. The same again is true of the throat itself. In fact, openness is an overall concept in singing and can be clearly seen when one is developing their vocal tone. Reverberation may be one of the most commonly known forms of resonance as far as singers are concerned. It is so common, in fact, that most microphone amplifiers, or PAs, come with a tone thickening effect built in called reverb, which is, of course, short for reverberation. And almost anyone who's heard reverb applied to their voice has at some point felt like they were singing in the bathroom or large hall. This is one of those effects that we apply to our voice to make us sound like truly gifted singers. But why? Why do so many people sing in a shower, for instance? I remember as a child watching an episode of The Flintstones where Fred overhears Barney singing beautifully in the shower, and then it occurred to him that the two of them could make millions of dollars with Barney's magnificent voice. Unfortunately, the only place Barney could sing so beautifully was in the shower. Whenever he tried singing outside the shower, the million-dollar voice was gone. And so from there, the story grew in its craziness. So the question that I pose for you is this: why showers? Why large rooms? Why bathrooms? Why do these types of environments almost always seem to make us sound better? Again, it all falls back to resonance, which, remember, is defined as sound overlapping itself. And that's exactly what a bathroom provides. You see, the average bathroom has walls that are almost always covered with ceramic tiles, which are extremely dense. This hardness of the tiles actually makes sound waves bounce off of them rather than absorb the energy, as would be found with less dense materials such as carpets and foam. The sound bounces or is reflected from wall to wall. So you're not hearing your voice once, you're hearing your voice thousands of times, layering over itself. Imagine thousands of you singing together. How thick the overall tone would be. And all it took were two important elements: hard walls and space. The more space given, the more reverberation occurs. And of course, the less space there is, the less reverberation occurs. Again, the concept of openness. This type of resonance, as it applies to singing, is achieved primarily in the mouth and the back of the throat. Inside our mouths, we have a hard, dense ceiling, commonly called the roof of the mouth, or what we like to refer to as the hard palate. The teeth are as close to tiles as you can get, which represents the walls of our bathroom. The back of the throat is the entrance into the sinuses, which are very bony and covered in a thin membrane, and below that is the larynx, which is made up of stiff cartilage. This central point between these two areas is known as the nasopharynx, and the entire structure itself can be looked at as our own personal facial bathroom, which ironically gives new meaning to the term potty mouth. So one can see that a more spacious mouth opening would help our tone by increasing the size of our facial bathrooms and therefore reverberation. Space and hard walls. What is very interesting is that the roof of the mouth or hard palate is dense enough to make some sound frequencies bounce, but is just soft enough to absorb other frequencies. It is a perfect resonating chamber and once again proves that voice is designed and is already pre-tuned to sound its best without any artificial techniques. So, to sum up, in order to achieve the most important feature of singing, which is the tone itself, we must gain control over the amount and consistency of our vocal resonance. We saw that within voice there are three types of resonance that were available to us, which are sounding board, air column, and reverberation. All three are naturally occurring, and all three can be controlled. I am Stephen Childs of virtualvoicelessons.net, and I would like to say thank you for listening, and God bless.